Good morning and welcome to this event. I need to apologize for this late beginning, but as it happens, we had some issues with the technical apparatus here. I don't even dare to figure out how to start a Zoom call, let alone much more complicated things. But welcome to everybody, to the people here in Venezia, and to those who accepted our invitations and were so kind to take part in this discussion in a remote mode. My name is Andrea Bocco. I'm the head of the DIST department at the Politecnico di Torino and the University of Turin as well. I need first of all to explain a little bit this, because usually a department belongs to a university. In our case, it belongs to two. We are an inter-university department, which makes it very stimulating and quite an interesting place to work. At the same time, it can be sometimes difficult to manage, but that's my business, and I don't want to annoy you with these things. The point is that some colleagues of ours, some 40 years ago, thought that it was a very interesting thing to try and study and design the future development of territories and cities by merging the skills and competences of people who worked in the planning field together with geographers. And this is how the department was born. Since then, things have been changing a lot, both inside the academia and outside of it. So now our department is quite large. We reached 102 members last month. And of course, the world is increasingly complex, so that the challenge is to be able to bring so many points of view, so many skills together to be able to grasp and contribute not only in terms of scientific knowledge, but also in terms of public engagement to managing and steering such a complexity. Our focus is still what it used to be: the urban, the territorial issues in their multifaceted aspects. I will not discuss this further, but since we are now hosted in a very interesting collateral event to the Biennale, that is called Students as Researchers, I will try to give you some information regarding the teaching at DIST, the learning at DIST, and how we think the themes that are developed in our teaching activities can contribute to the discussion today. The courses that are offered at DIST are at the 3 levels: bachelor, master's and third levels, that is PhD and specialization. We have a single bachelor that is on territorial, urban, environmental and landscape planning. And after that, we have several master's courses, one again in urban and regional planning, one in landscape architecture, which is quite new. I mean, it was already there since long, but it has been reformed and relaunched just a few weeks ago. One in geography and territorial sciences, and finally, one which is also quite new, in digital skills for sustainable societal transitions. Which means we address the spatial issues from a quite broad point of view. We offer training basically in three professions, that is planning, landscape architecture, and geography, which means all of these specialists, these professionals can contribute from their own position to addressing the urban challenges and the territorial challenges we face. Of course, the training of architects has always been a kind of workshop-like, and this is what we inherited from our own training, and we are proposing today still. This is kind of uncommon for our colleagues, engineers, and our colleagues at the University of Torino, but our training, and this is obvious more or less all over the world, is based on ateliers, on design studios, which focus on the transformation of the reality we are studying, most of the time at least, which means this is not theoretical study alone. This has always to do with an engagement, a transformation of reality. And this is done in cooperation. Students typically work in groups, and also the teachers are usually not alone. They work together from different disciplines. This is, I repeat, quite obvious in architectural schools more or less everywhere, but this is not the case for many other disciplines which are part of our two universities, which makes us an interesting case study for the experimentation of teaching practices, which is one of the strong points of our department. On one hand, the teachers, the professors, are university professors. They develop academic research, and they try to bring into the teaching the themes of their own research and experimentation. On the other hand, they're working together with the students in the design studios and the other applied practices allows the research activity to move one step forward. Imagine every time you analyze an urban area, an issue, a landscape feature or any other theme you might think of. What it means if you have 15 or 50 students elaborating proposals and ideas about that themes, which this deploys an incredible range of creativity, of ideas, and so on. And this is much more true in the last decades when our universities have become more and more international. For instance, in the urban and regional planning master's course, there is an English teaching track, which is dedicated to discussing the global urban agenda. And that one is, I think, about 60% made of students from all over the world. And the same applies for other courses which are also taught in English. So this huge amount of diversity and creativity contributes to the advancement of research. In today's selection, we have tried to give you a palette of the teaching courses and the themes which are offered at DIST. Typically, the three areas of our investigation are the urbanization, the environmental issues, and heritage. Even in the PhD course, this is more or less reflected in a field of study dedicated to urban and regional studies, one dedicated to planning, one to sustainability sciences. So there are so many things which are obviously interconnected, obviously take some advantage from each other, but still need to be considered as individual skills and competencies. We strongly believe that a person cannot contribute seriously to any process if she or he is not strong in a single discipline. But at the same time, these people should have a capacity to understand the complexity of the many other areas which need to be taken into account. Otherwise, cooperation with other professionals is impossible. The projects we are going to hear about this morning are both scholarly and oriented toward the transformation of reality. Both contribute to the advancement of scientific knowledge and to the contribution of public policies in some way at different degrees. I think that the students, graduates, and PhD candidates we are going to hear this morning show not only the diversity of themes and approaches which can be found in DIST teaching, but what counts more, show that they can at the same time contribute to the advancement of some scientific experimentation in teaching methods, and build their own careers in the academia and without in the broader world. Since we started very late this morning, and I apologize again for this problem, I would like to stop it here. Thank you again for your being present at this event, and we'll immediately pass on the floor to the PhD students. According to my program here, it's them who will start. So Agostino Strina is going to tell us about how food logistics is changing our cities, and he will be followed by Redina Mazelli, who will spoke about bio-based materials in the construction sector. So you see already that these two themes are quite different from each other, but again, bio-based materials and food must have something in common. And you will recognize that there are so many possible links among the themes. So thank you again for your attention, and please, Agostino.
So, hello everyone. My name is Agostino Strina. I am a PhD candidate in urban regional development, and I'm the third year of my PhD. And today I'm going to speak about my research interests, which are focusing around the food logistics, the logistics overall, and the relationship with the urban environment. Today I will speak mostly about my PhD research, which is titled as this presentation, How Food Logistics is Changing Our Cities, Large-Scale Retail Trade Distribution Centers in Italy. I'm just realized that in this PC there is not a font that I use for the presentation, so sometimes there will be something a little bit off, but doesn't matter. And I say that I will speak mostly about my PhD research because my interest about the logistics and the urban environment has bring to develop this research interest also in other activities in the DIST department. First of all, some bachelor and master courses, a theoretical one in the bachelor and a design-oriented one in the master courses, where I'm teaching assistant with the professor Angelo Sampieri, which is also the supervisor of this research, where with the student we try to understand better how the logistics is changing the dynamics in terms of environmental and social impact, but also how it's possible to design some logistic platform that take in consideration what happens around them. And I did also supervisor in some theses that were focusing on the Amazon logistics, so not the food one, the Amazon one, but with some outcomes that are similar to the ones that I'm going to present. So first of all, to have a general framework of my research, I'd like to say that over the past 2 decades, the large-scale retailers, so Carrefour, Coop, Conad, and so on, has deeply redefined the structure of food logistics due to different reasons. The main ones is the goal to increase the performativity of the supply chain, a bigger attention to the food safety, a structural changes in the consumer demand with a more attention to the biological product, the different type of diet, and so on, and a more sustainable supply chain. This transformation happens mainly through logistical refinement, technological advancement, and a more automation throughout the supply chain. The main spaces where this transformation is taking place are the distribution centers, which are these very boxy objects that we can see in this slide. Distribution centers are the last pieces, are the last piece of the food. Sorry. Allora. No. Come dite? Scusate. Ok. Ok, ho stoppato. Condividi.
Condividi.
Io vedo schermo 2, forse questa presentazione.
Sì, sì, e poi fai. Adesso qui adesso la puoi lasciare. Sì, però deve ripartire. Immagini. E adesso la visione. Cioè, sì.
Ma non va. Non si vede niente.
Come non va? Lui ha creato, Zoom ha creato delle istantanee.
Allora, proviamo a interrompere. Allora, scusami, proviamo a fare interrompi. I'm sorry for this technical moment, but we try to close the presentation, to open again, and to try to share again from the beginning. Okay, quindi prima dici,
sì.
ok?
Sì.
Ok. Okay, perfect. Okay, so now I have to share on Zoom. So, sure. Okay, so perfect. I think that now it's working. So I will try to reduce myself. Okay, perfect. So this slide we already seen. So the automation and the big high-tech transformation. As I said, the distribution centers are these objects that are the mainly spaces where the changes in the food distribution logistics is taking place. And as you can see in this graphic, they are the pinkish one, and they are the last piece of the food logistics. And they are used by mass market retailers for hosting all stages of food reception, sorting, and delivery to the vast networks of their stores. From an architectural point of view, they are huge warehouses. So there are some boxes, buildings with an internal surface that can reach up to 60,000 square meters. So they are quite big. And they are designed based on norms, codes, algorithms, and dimensions that are very engineered one. They are taking consideration the needs of the food distribution at every step, every stage of the process. They have also some peculiarities compared to other forms of logistics. First of all, the high distances between the production and the consumption areas, the low added value of the market products, the perishability and seasonability of some food products, for example, the food and vegetables, and the needs to ensure high quality standards and strict health regulation throughout the supply chain and other aspects, secondary aspects. These peculiarities are very relevant because they make food distribution centers highly depends on human labor and more resistant to forms of automation compared to other forms of logistics, such as the technological products one, if you are thinking, for example, about Amazon, Zara, and so on. In Italy, we have a spread of these objects, and nowadays there are more than 450 distribution centers in Italy. And as you can see, the distribution along the nation is uneven. In the north, we have a concentration that is sprinkled along the main infrastructure network of high-speed road, highways, while in the center and in the north and the center and the south of Italy, they are agglomerate informally industrial district. This phenomena of this growing logistics surface is an ever-expanding phenomenon. If you are, for example, comparing, checking the comparison in these maps, you can see in gray the new logistics surfaces in the period between 2008 and 2020. That is compared with the new logistics surfaces, the red one, in the 2020-2021. And you can see how the new surfaces in the 2 years period is almost the same as the 15 years period before. So in the last 3-4 years during the COVID pandemic, but also in these 2 years later, you have a huge explosion of this phenomena of the growing of logistics platforms. So within this framework of major national and supranational rearrangements in the structure of the food distribution, the hypothesis of my PhD thesis is how, at the same time, profound changes occurs also to the urbanization of the territories where the distribution system stands on. So, in other words, how the changes in the logistic process brings upheavals, adjustments, fragmentations, problems also to the territories around them. And so distribution centers progressively establish new urbanization that are so intertwined with contexts that are even less confined to the administrative and functional boundaries within which they are located. So it's not anymore the buildings, it's not anymore the region, it's not anymore the nations, but it's a multi-scalar and multi-actorial phenomenon. So to better understand what's going on in the territories surround them, it was necessary to go down on scale and to have a detailed observation in some specific case studies that I have selected. So I decided to focus on 3 areas in Italy. The first one is Liscate, is the 2 municipalities of Liscate and Casirate d'Adda that are in the metropolitan logistic region, in the highway between Milan, Turin, and Venice, Turin, Milan, Venice. And the second one is in Santa Palomba, close to Rome. And the third one is in Aversa Nord, close to Naples. I decided to select these 3 areas because, first of all, they are the place with the highest logistical density in Italy. So they have the major concentration of food distribution along the nation. And also because they represent 3 different processes of urbanization ongoing. So to try to summarize, this one is Santa Palomba. It hosts 29 logistics companies and 7 food distribution centers. And as you can see, it has the urban forms of an agglomeration, because it was the spaces of the logistic taking place, the space of the production made in the 60s and the 70s with the policies of the Area Sviluppo Industriale, which were some areas that were developed by the government, the national government, to bring the south and the center and the south of Italy to the same level of industrial development of the north of Italy. The second area is in Aversa Nord and has a very similar urban forms than the previous one, is shared the same stories of the Area Sviluppo Industriale. It hosts 8 food distribution centers, but there is one very huge difference, is that while in Santa Palomba the logistics replaced the production, In Aversa Nord, the food logistics is working together with the production. So it's an increasing density, it's not a substitution. While the third case studies is Liscate and Casirate d'Adda in the Milan logistics region. We are along the highway, as I said before. As you can see in this slide, there is just only 4 distribution centers, but just because they are more sprinkled, they are more spread along a major infrastructure. In fact, if you are changing scale, you can see how the 30% of the revenue of the Italian logistics sector is taking place in these spaces. There is 30 food distribution centers and 860 warehouses. So the phenomena around the area of Milan is impressive. So let's speak about the fieldwork. The first phase was a first documentary phase. So I was selecting some maps, some official documents to try to reconstruct, in one hand, the history of the urban development of this place, and in the other hand, to try to understand the policies, the actors that are trying to manage it, they are trying to regulate it. Sometimes with some successful stories, sometimes the majority one with not enough power to try to regulate it. And the second and most important activities was the field work, because I didn't say before, but I have a background in architecture. So I am an urban planner with a background in architecture. And one of the biggest and most important attention of my research was the grounding of these logistics in some specific spaces. So the observation through the spaces and a study through the spaces. So I did a lot of fieldwork research in 11 distribution centers during the night, during the day, speaking with a lot of people, recording videos, shooting photos, and it's a very important documentary phase of my research. And of course, as I have anticipated, some informal, so not structured, but also structured interviews were made with logistic directors, distribution centers directors, but also workers at every stage. So we have a lot of workers. So building upon the research field, conducting in these 3 areas, some issues can be highlighted. First of all, how the codified logistic operation of distribution centers is being shaped by the human practices that are gradually being determined on their inside and outside. So while there is logistic spaces, such as the previous one, there is also offices, conferences room, canteens, locker room, with, as you can see, a very poor architectural quality. But even if these spaces have a very poor architectural quality, they have a very huge importance in terms of social practices. Because, for example, when I went in these spaces in the February 2022, in this locker room, there was a lot of workers that were watching together a football match during the shift change. And so the spaces that are collateral, that are very smaller compared to the logistics one, are not just functional spaces for changing the clothes, but they becoming a social places of interaction. And of course, these spaces are also highly personalized by 20, 30 years old worker stories of logistic managers and so on. There are also some temporary spaces, some self-machine food areas and so on that, as I said, have very poor quality, but they are very important. The second aspect is how distribution centers expansion activates the establishment of other significant logistic players. We don't have only the food ones, but in this case, we have Amazon, we have Zara, we have Moncler, and so on. And they are trying to agglomerate it to create a very specific economy. And here's some other example. This increasing social density that is generated by the boost, by the density of workers, is generating also a boost in the commercial activities. So we have the openings of some hotels, some food court, some McDonald's, some fit experts, some gyms, and so on. Distribution centers generate also dysfunction and friction to the functioning of the territories. For example, in Santa Palomba in Rome, the municipality has decided to build a new district. Yeah, 2 minutes and finish. They built a new district of social housing that doesn't take in consideration, of course, the density of the street and the traffic and so on. And this is to take in consideration. There is no parking lots. So the trucks are all around the city. And even if the parking lots, sometimes they are built, they are very impermeable and they have a very huge impact in terms of characteristics. The last aspects that it's important to take in consideration is how the widespread of distribution centers have an impact on the forms of employees' residency and mobility. So the workers are sharing the house together, they are creating new units family, they are sharing sometimes cars, sometimes they are moving using bikes, using scooters, and all of these forms of mobility, they are not taken in consideration when we are building these spaces. So I finished my presentation, and I hope just to highlight some aspects to try to summarize. So all these aspects that I said lead us to reflect on the fact that distribution centers represent, first of all, an intertwined process of urbanization that is driven by national and supranational economies and policies, but at the same time, they are local eccentricities that are able to redefine the territorial balances and the relationship by shifting the center of the context. So they are not anymore some elements that are outside the city, but they are a city itself. And so they are, for this reason, they become a city in terms of urban practices, urban residency, and so on. They are an extension of the urban domain where city-related dynamics gradually takes over. And for this reason, I consider these spaces an hybrid spaces. And for the fact that they are hybrid spaces, they are spaces that they need and they must deal with an urban design project. So as an urban designer, we need to consider these spaces as the space of a design, because they are not anymore an engineer space. They are not just the grounding of a huge supply chain, but they are also a city that is working with itself and in the surrounding territories. So sorry for the time that maybe I didn't respect, but we have a lot of technical problems. So thank you very much. So I leave the floor to Redina Mazelli, which is my colleagues at the PhD.
Okay, hello. I'm Redina. I'll try to be very quick, so I'll skip the introduction. PhD student, Urban and Regional Development, DIST department. I'll be talking about my research that is based on bio-based materials in the construction sector. It starts from an emergency, as we all know, to lower the emissions due to the climate situation currently. I will not go into the details of the impact that the construction sector has in the emissions, in negative emissions. Let's agree it's a lot, and it's much more that we can afford currently. So there is this need to change the situation and to have a kind of paradigm shift in the sector. Obviously, this needs a very good strategy that involves from research, more scientific data, a change in the production, manufacture systems, and then, of course, professional training, academic teaching, communication, and lobbying to push for more fair policies that consider more the impact on the climate. So what we're trying to do with this research is to recover some data that cover from environmental aspects to materials properties and building performance, and base this on laboratory samples, prototypes, but most importantly, real scale prototypes, because we're talking about non-conventional materials that tend to perform differently on site from what they do theoretically. So in order to do this, the research program that's we're carrying on is called Experimental Pavilions of Vegetarian Architecture. Very quickly, the concept of vegetarian architecture involves some principles that include the choice of natural, renewable materials as much as possible, locally available, free of toxic chemicals and little processed. In this way, we have a maximization of low impact materials and a minimum quantity of energy intensive ones. So as you see, it's not only about the environment, it's also a question of psychological and physical well-being. It's a question of local economy and so on. The building techniques that were chosen to explore derive from a thorough previous research on case studies in Europe and elsewhere of radically ecological buildings. Three techniques were chosen. The first is light earth and reed building with a timber structural frame. The second, load-bearing straw bale, and the third, load-bearing hempcrete. We're building in a site just outside of Turin, in Grugliasco, in a small town. Each building has a gross internal area of nearly 30 square meters. They have the same orientation, almost uniform characteristics. Then, of course, there are some changes that derive from the different techniques explored. The first one, the light earth pavilion, is... Okay, okay. The first one is has a foundation of recycled aggregate gabions, and then on top there is a large structure of wood, and the infill is light earth and reed. In very short, there are some photos from the construction. This is the foundation. It's all above ground because we could not dig in the site. It was a limitation of the site. So everything you see there is up. Well, this is the flooring with the reed panels and the wall structures. And this is the current situation. In the future, we'll go on with the insulation. The second pavilion, the straw bale one, has two horizontal floorings, which are these big boxes of timber infilled with wheat straw, and then the walls are rice straw pinned with hazelnut sticks. The foundation is these big blocks of stone, and on top lay chestnut beams that are dryly joined. Again, some photos. This is the current situation. And the third, okay, you already see the difference in the representation. This is because we're trying to test a load-bearing hempline building, which has not done before. Like hempline buildings have a structure inside that is either in timber or in other materials as well, depending on the case. So let's see if it's doable to have only hempline. So there's the feasibility study first. We're doing first a portion of the pavilion, and we'll see what happens. This is some form work. This is we were trying to test some mixtures. So basically, I'll be speaking now about the first two pavilions, the light earth one and the straw bale one, on which we have already some results. The more complete ones on the environmental impact. So we performed an LCA assessment for the first life cycle stages from A1 to A5, compiling with the European norms. The good part of this was that we have the first-hand experience, so there are basically no assumption. All the data is primary data. Obviously, the first results, the contribution analysis, shows that the energy-intensive products are a large portion of the emissions, although despite being a very small part in terms of weight and volume of the building, this is because the rest is quite low, obviously. Another significant contribution is the transport. Again, it shows that transport values must be included in this type of assessments, and that since the rest is very low, the importance becomes even bigger. But on the bright side, we can afford to increase a bit the transport distances because we have the rest very low. So the values are still not that bad, even if we've gone up to 500 kilometers. I'm not saying this very proudly. We tried to stay as near as possible to the site, but again, it shows that maybe the market, at least as far as the North Italy as the region is concerned, is not very well equipped. So there are certain things, certain materials of this kind that you cannot find closer to where you're building. So, you know, still, most of the material in weight comes from short distances, let's say. And the other important thing to stress is that here we're showing the kilometers from the manufacturer to the site, but in most of the cases, the provider corresponds also to the manufacturer, and the raw materials are locally sourced. So, good, nice thing that is beyond the numbers. There is a big difference between the two pavilions in terms of weight. And we were wondering if it's true that lighter is better, because the conception in architecture has very often been that light means less for some reason. And so better, not necessarily, because it may mean less in terms of kilograms. It may not mean less in terms of impact. So for instance, here, straw bale pavilion in weight is less than half than the lighter pavilion, but in impact we're almost there. It's the difference is very small, and not to its advantage. That because the lighter pavilion has a very heavy foundation and also heavy perimeter walls, because it has earth, but earth is very low impact, so a lot of quantity, a little CO2 value. We added another part because we're stressing the use of bio-based material for a reason. So we added the calculations for biogenic carbon. That is to say, very briefly, the CO2 that is absorbed during the life cycle of the plant, because we're talking about plant-based materials. And we noticed that we arrived to 20 tons of CO2 for each pavilion, a negative balance. So there is a potential of these kind of buildings not only to have a low impact, but to let's say restore some benefit environmentally. There is a comparison with a conventional building, which is a parametric model developed at ETH Zurich, based obviously in concrete and conventional installation. And you can see that it's negative and positive. So even if we don't get into the numbers, we can notice what happens. This is, of course, to be attributed to bio-based materials, and also to the fact that 40% is fast growing and 60% is timber. What happens is that timber, for construction at least, has a very long life. So you need to have a tree of at least 20, 30 years old. And we have an emergency now. So when we're using annual crops such as hemp and straw and reed, we are saving carbon right now. So you see the advantage in doing this. As a conclusion, yeah, we managed to have these carbon negative buildings, but we need to consider a few limitations of the research. First of all, it's experimental character. So there are components that are not present in these buildings, such as building services. And this may be a limitation, maybe not much, because if we're comparing with conventional buildings, there we have probably a higher need for heating and for cooling. Still, we have to assess this part in these buildings, but there might be a chance that they don't need as many heated or cooled days as a conventional building does. So there will be services, but how much will they impact is to see in the future. Again, we have some constraints in this site. For instance, from a point of view of the design, we don't have a maximization of passive energy performance. It could be improved in a real scale, in a real scale project, in a real project. The buildings are small. So, but this can also show that we need to build smaller, because obviously we'd have less impact, and it's a limitation mostly in developed countries, because our standard is not living at 30 square meters. In some situations, it's quite good, like in emergency architecture and such. And the biggest limitation, I'd say, but that is also opens up an opportunity, is the design choice for the foundations, because most of the impact in buildings that are also based on these principles and use bio-based materials, most of the impact is to be found in the foundation, which are almost always in concrete and in steel. Here we're using very little transformed materials. One is natural stone, the other is demolition waste. We're lucky because we're in a non-seismic area. We have a one-story building, and the ground is not bad, it's favorable. But again, that might also be the case in many other examples from the city, where we have small buildings that maybe do not need concrete foundations. So it's just a point to reflect. So this is the first part of the research on environmental impacts. Then there's a second part that explores the materials from a point of view of properties and performance of the buildings. I'll go on very quickly because this is ongoing. I just want to say that there's been some tests on the laboratory when the mixtures, for instance, were specifically designed for the project. We tested some building elements, some prototypes, when there was needed and when there was something very new compared to the literature. And of course, there have been tests during the construction, and data will also be monitored once the construction is complete. We're talking about using sensors and probes to measure temperature, humidity, not only internal of the buildings, but also of the walls, of the floors inside the building elements, to test the durability of the buildings and such. Okay, so to conclude in line with what we're talking about today, it's not just my PhD research, it's a kind of a big project. So there are 2 PhD theses going on, and some master theses have been published, and other are currently ongoing. And there have been a lot of students involved in the construction, and there will be also in the future, because we're not done yet. So we're trying to also include the training part of this strategy I talk about in the beginning, and try to talk about these things among the students at the university. This is the state of the art. Currently, there is a QR code there that is supposed to send you to some social page of the project if you're curious to see future developments. Thank you.
This was for the PhD program. It was hard to choose between the ongoing researches because there are 100 PhD students in our program at the moment. So we just picked a couple of maybe very different scales. But this is not everything about our third level, because we together with a PhD program, we also have a school of specialization. This is a very specific institution. In Italy, we have a few of them all over the country, and these are dedicated to training experts in the field of heritage. The people who graduate from these schools typically go to Soprintendenza, that is the national institution for the protection of monuments and landscapes, but also find job opportunities in other companies, both public and private. So I leave the floor now to one of the graduates of this school. In his case, the research has been already completed in the past. This is about one of our star architects of Torino and maybe of the whole Italian 20th century, Carlo Molino. This will be the team of Andrea Minella, who is going to speak now. Please, Andrea.
Okay. Good morning. I'm Andrea Minella, architect and specialized in architectural and landscape heritage at the School of Specialization of Polytechnic of Turin, with a thesis about Carlo Molino and his architecture in the Turin area. And this project is a part of a collaboration agreement between the city of Turin and the Polytechnic of Turin, this department, which sees the School of Specialization in Architectural and Landscape Heritage engage in relevant studies and researches on the general revision of the master plan of the city of Turin. Carlo Molino is a very complex personality as a designer, and his architecture places material constraints on the urban environment. And necessary urban reading of his work was immediately noticed by Giuseppe Pagano when he presented Molino's degree thesis and his early work in Costruzioni Casabella. Pagano perceived how Molino architecture takes the functionalist and rationalist constants to their limits. How these are linked to the urban design of the city according to a critical interpretation that stems from the countless projects, notes, and sketches. This interpretation generation rule in a future perspective, as if Molino designed on his ideal master plan. The intrinsic element of this truth can be found in this article in Domus of May 1936 for urban architecture by Levi Montalcini, Molino, and Pifferi. And urban planning is architecture in action. having discarded the idea of urban planning according to a theoretically accomplishment and definitive plan, there arise and the need to think about improving the urban layout in harmony with both contingent needs and the evolutionary process. The city of yesterday still reflected too much the individualistic concept, where man operated with a short horizon of his possibilities. From the newer quarter of Turin, or Resting Society, is architecture demolished in 1960, emerged the design approach to the theme of architecture and urban composition. Mollino recomposed a block of the city of Turin in relation to the urban space, with going beyond a purely functionalistic experience. Mollino set the complex of with two fundamental volumes in continuity with the pedestrian paths, throughout the nation with other four architectural bodies, with taking care of the urban spatial interpretation and the differentiation of the materials. The volumes are isolating themselves, but at the same time open up to a new interpretation of the context. And we constantly ties the same relationship between the construction of architecture and the construction of the city in all its architecture. All this work are linked to idea of the city. A relationship that may seem obvious in some ways, but not so balanced in its theorization and construction, especially in a world, also contemporary world, in which very important elements has been totally lost in the rule of design, but also in the culture and sensibility of architect. Which is the expression of the idea of construction in the city in each architectural work. This simple initial consideration derived from analytic study on Mollino lesson in the Turin Iron and his work built in Turin to draw a precise cataloging of them, where the three main catalogs on Mollino works are analyzed and studied in a constant comparison with the material kept in the Carlo Mollino archive at Polytechnic of Turin, and studied in relationship with Mollino design theory. Destined from his main book, Architecture, Art and Technique, co-written with Carlo Franco Vadachino in 1947. And in this writing, we found the foundation of his work as an architect, through precise references to other architects we might consider it not so close with to his personality, such as Gropius, Le Corbusier, or Wright. But the references makes up we realize how Mollino work, just like the architecture of Gropius, Le Corbusier, and Wright, are profoundly linked to the implementation of the construction rules of an idea of the city, where it's not the individual artifact must operate it, where architecture doesn't live on a aesthetic fact for the mere drama of existing, but is the unitary and complete design of the artifact, modulated on the architectural and urban rules, conceived with an element of the city in form. This resulted in a complex work as Mollino architecture was completely detached with his eclectic personality. The cataloging of architecture conducting this thesis project is based on the parameter defined by Italian Ministry of Culture with other addition. Which are both quantitative criteria, such as the bibliography recurrences, or critical criteria, the study of elements linked to the historical and architectural events, the maturation of the culture and disciplinary divided, and the significant role this architecture played in the context. Integrating with a new section to protection already implemented in favor of this architecture at various levels, master plan, landscape plan, or legislative constraint. And a section of analysis of the state of conservation of this architecture, with a comparison between the original drawings in the archive and the photography comparison. This catalog of architecture become a knowledge process that can support any degree intervention of this architecture, and also on its context, from the revision of master plan, the revision of landscape plans, to technical implementation, to simple intervention regulations such as conservation, restoration, or simple maintenance. In these regards, the urbanistic reading of Mollino's work therefore become a factor of absolute importance in order to better understand their location and their capacity to build a urban sector in a full definitive organism, even in a future coordination process. The impression that we feel observing his work in their integrity is the involvement that these architects have with the Turing urban factor in a critical reinterpretation about the traditional structure of the city. We can take this project in a Casa Block as an example to support this, the consideration of the diverging this research. In 1956, Mollino, with his colleague Bordogna, Campo, Dolza, Graffi, and Rosani, planned a new popular neighborhood in Turin of vast extension, defined in his planimetrically two main axes already existing of Via Castelgomberto, si vede, Via Castelgomberto, Corso Sebastopoli e Via Guido Reni. And the rationalist references are clear in the set-term modality. The building is arranged perpendicularly to the dominant axis, street axis, in contrast to the classical line plans at the time based on the system on the closed country art blocks. And a large part of surface area is given over the private greenery. The plan is based on 9 high tower building and low in buildings with only 5 floors. This is the perspective. This is a rare example of Molino work in public residential construction, but this project in Casablanca still presented that innovative and experimental attempt at the change in both urban and architectural terms, and which, according to Molino, profoundly differentiation it from the project on his fellow urban planners, such as La Falquera by Astengo. And the value of this project is dictated to the role it plays in the urban layout, which is able to compare with the overall vision of the city master plan approved in 1959. Representative a planning of this year, but in this project emerge an innovative spirit which exceed the okay. With municipal regulation, but linked to the variant of rationalized planning at the beginning of the century, with an idea, with a new organization of urban spaces and a real expression of the society of those years. Okay, thank you.
So good morning, my name is Claudia Castatella. I'm the head of the School of Planning and Design at PoliTo. I'm Angeletta Voghera. I'm the chief of the Urban and Regional Planning Master of Science in DIST Polytechnic of Turin. So just a few words to introduce our students and past students. Our school in planning is one of the oldest in Italy, with Venice and Milan. Our school provides bachelor's and master's in planning since more than 20 years now, and we enrolled around 80 students per year. And more these students come from all over the world, from 4 continents, and we are very glad to have a rich and diverse community of Italian and international planners. So today we choose to show a few researchers' final dissertation thesis. Our dissertations are, well, a huge work, as you will see. And we selected a variety of topics that show the methods that we use. A method that is, I would say, characterized by transdisciplinarity. The students deal with a real case study, usually in interaction with stakeholders, with administrations or even citizens. You will see from more technical approaches to approaches that involve local communities, citizens associations, or organized groups of stakeholders in discussing the challenges, but also discussing the possible solution and strategies. And we are very lucky to have established good relationship with our administrations, so that students can really feel to be engaged, and also to have a real audience. And some of the, as you will see, some of the results of their studies are really taken into consideration into the real world of decision makers, which is really, well, an honor for us. So now
we have chosen 3 case study cases in this wide range of panorama of our activities and transdisciplinary and transscalar methods of our research thesis, and all of them are based on a community-based and also a place-based approach. Trying to develop with diverse methods some research topics. From the first one is related to rural landscape development, starting from in evaluation approach and Chiumarulo. It's a Chiumarulo thesis. The second one is related to an experimentation with Saramiro and our colleague on adaptation to climate change. And the third is an experimentation of our approach, didactical approach and research approach, very close to the territorial needs, and it is an experimentation in the Aurora lab, that is an hub of PoliTo research in action that works in the territory and for the community. And it's the Rita Seminario thesis. So we can start this last part of the presentation with Chiumarulo. Thank you for the attention. Ok, dice così.
Beh, se la caverà lui, vedrai.
Hello, good morning to everyone. My name is Matteo Chiumarulo, and I was a master's degree student in urban and regional planning at Politecnico di Torino. And in this presentation, I want to explain the approach, methods, and the results following the research work I carried out during the last year of my master's degree. The title is Methods for Enhancing the Rural Landscape, precisely because landscape, together with rural development and local development, were the 3 main themes of the research. The topic of landscape, in fact, nowadays has seen a shift from a sectoral interest based on aesthetic character and aesthetic features and exceptional values towards a multidisciplinary approach that allows it to be analyzed at different scales and according to the 3 main activities of landscape, so protection, management, and planning. So the landscape is also a cultural landscape because formed by both natural components and the cultural heritage in a sense of cultural heritage as a driver for community resilience. As we have said, landscape is a multidisciplinary approach. So the aim of the research is to seek an integration between instruments that operate on the landscape, like European policies, landscape planning, or local initiatives. So the methodology started from the choice of analyzing the rural development funds and through the tools of economic analysis, understand how they were distributed over the territory. The reference territory is the regional scale and in particular the Piemonte region. The object of the research was the rehabilitation of the historical heritage projects financed with the funds of the Rural Development Program, and from the use of multi-criteria analysis the projects were divided into categories, and such as public spaces, we see below buildings, or rural constructions. Subsequently, each category were divided into specific elements. For example, public spaces like parks, buildings like churches or town hall, and rural constructions like towers or other rural construction like castles. So specific elements were divided in functions. And this means that starting from each project, we want to understand the final result. For example, the recovery of public spaces created new trials, or recovery of ancient buildings served to create new info points for tourist information, while new spaces for exhibitions or temporary events have been created in rural buildings. And the research consists of both quantitative then qualitative methods of assessment, and the aim was the integration between landscape planning at a regional scale and the policies for rural development at European level. In fact, it's very important to combine planning with the scheduling of economic resources in order to have winning projects on territory. The scale is the regional sub-area in which there are the local action groups, which, as we will see later, are a public-private partnership. The method started from the construction of indicators, quantitative indicators that have a spatial representation of the synergy that exists between the projects and the landscape components divided into natural, cultural, perceptive, or morphological components. To do this, an overlay mapping exercise was carried out with the use of geographical information systems tools to produce a spatialization of this integration. The research is followed through the comparison of two case studies with the different analysis criteria, with the intention of analyzing the following aspects. First, the growth of the tourism capacity, so the projects that have led to greater services for the population. Synergies with the landscape planning, so the indicators seen before, and the integration with the trail network, and in fact below we see the overlap of the projects closest to the local trail network. And finally, the visibility from viewpoints for the more perceptive aspects. To have better results, the research must have qualitative methods. So interviews based on open-ended questions, like semi-structural interviews, were carried out with the various local action groups in the region. A LAG, a local action group, is an association we see in the box on the left, that deals with enhancing its territory and is made up of both public and private sectors, like local administrations, cultural providers, citizens in organizations, and professional organizations like farmers or micro enterprises. The topics of the interview were aimed at understanding how to reduce the gap in the projects in view of the next programming funds. and it was asked what type of perception people have on the landscape in which they live. Also understand how to improve the place-based approach. So starting from the needs of the community, local community, and also understand how to improve the impact of public policies on and the projects on territory. And in conclusion, the research served the regional public administration to provide them with a new method for analyzing the territory and integrating their tools. In fact, the best method for this way is to divide the territory into sub areas and assign development targets to each. Involving the local community in the construction of strategies is the best method. And this would allow projects and the use of economic resources to be better directed. The products of the research, below we see some examples of landscape enhancement objective in rural areas, like implement the trails, create new infrastructures for mountain villages, so recovery the local heritage. And the products of the research, which started from an internship I carried out at a regional research institution, IRES Piemonte, where the other following other first a thesis, then a publication, several articles in online journals, and other conferences and seminars. In particular, in the seminar, local stakeholders spoke local stakeholders, leaders of the region's mountain sector, the LEGS directors, and the academia. All of these actors stimulated a circular debate that continues of this day. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here today. My name is Shushanik Ovakimian. I am master student in territorial, urban, environmental, and landscape planning in PoliTo+UniTo di Torino. I'm taking English path, which called Planning for Global Urban Agenda. And today I would like to share with you my progress, my results on ongoing research thesis focused on planning for urban heat island in the city of Torino. During my master degree, I had the pleasure to participate in many national and international workshops. One of them was comparing US and Europe approaches to planning for urban resilience, where I had pleasure to meet Professor Sarah Miro from Arizona State University, who introduced me to the methodology she has developed last year together with Led Keith on the plan integration for resilience scorecard for heat. The methodology itself is done for communities to analyze how heat mitigation policies are integrated into different plans and system of plans inside itself, and to identify opportunities to better target heat mitigation in the high-risk areas in the cities. The methodology itself is based on other scorecard methodology released few years earlier in 2015 by Berg and others, which is basically the special evaluation of network of plans to reduce vulnerability hazards. Therefore, thanks to this methodologies, I have decided to take them as a testing methodologies for the city of Torino. So why why concentrate on urban heat and heat hazard? Unfortunately, last year specifically showed that heat hazard is something that is very much underestimated in scientific and planning circles, as it is the most deathless hazard existing, and it is the hazard that we cannot maybe from see the consequences from by naked eye, and we should just refer to the statistics to see actually the damages the hazard can and are doing to our citizens and citizens themselves. So just would like to show you some numbers to underline this issue. In 2022 only, between the end of May and September, Italy had doubled, even more than doubled, the number of death records based on heat hazard over the Europe statistic. And we know well that the European continent is suffering from heat hazard even and climate change more than any other continent. Therefore, 2023 are breaking even that records. We don't have yet the statistic on mortality, but we already know that July itself, specifically 18th of July, was the warmest, hottest day at the record history. That, for example, in Sardinia, only the record was breaking by reaching the 48.8 degrees Celsius mark. While in north of Italy, would like to underline a few other days which reached, let's say, heat waves reached their peak in north of Italy between 18 to 24 of August. So-called African heat wave hit and damaged the north more. So, to analyze, to go deep in this topic, we should firstly, as scientific world, of course, as scientific world teaches us to understand the concepts at first, to know how to manage them, how to identify this specific phenomenons in the system of plans, in actions and plans citizens already have. So what is heat wave, what is extreme heat, what is urban heat island is the main concepts we should focus our attention on. So how to address urban heat hazard? The methodology proposed by professors from Arizona State University has proposing the following actions, which are split into subcategories that called heat mitigation and heat management. Therefore, would like to underline here that heat mitigation and heat management concepts and names used here in United States context, in European context, could be named as terminology under the heat adaptation term. Therefore, the following actions on your screen that you can see on your screen are guidelines for the communities to follow to address in specific environments. But before addressing them, the first thing was to actually try to implement this scorecard concept, this methodology over each case or each city. The methodology itself is divided in 3 phases. So creating scorecard itself, analyzing it, and then placing some advanced resilience actions into selected plans and selected areas of the city. Therefore, today I would like just to stress few steps because we will run out of the time if I will talk about all of them. So as the first steps, the most important was to identify from each city that was taken which plans could be analyzed and put it under this methodology. To understand that, the authors propose some categorization from comprehensive general plans to climate action plans to even small areas of neighborhood plans. This categorization will help us then to see and divide plans and policies into different subcategories to better understand and better evaluate them. So after identification of the plans, from each plan were taken all the action policies that could pass the following selection process. The first step was to make them pass 3-point tests. So only policies and actions that was heat related, place specific, and could be monitored, so could have that had specific tools to be monitored, could be selected, and all 3 points should have been met to pass this 3-point test. Only the plans that passed this test then was categorized by policy tool, by heat mitigation strategy, and by geospatial indicators, which is the key here for us to use this methodology in general. So, after categorization, we could finally score the policies. The purpose of scoring was to understand actually which policies work and which needs to be modified maybe or rethink of. So the policies who specifically mitigated heat, they were assigned +1 point. The policies that exacerbate heat, -1. That policies that maybe had both, so +1, -1, they had a neutral effect, so 0 in there. And of course, there will be many policies who would have unknown effects. So here, what the most important here was, according to authors, unknown policies. So the policies that had a hidden potential to be actually to be modified and revision in the future. After scoring each policy, the policies were placed on the map, and under each, on the map which had as a base, census or some other base division of the city. Therefore, each division had a number of policies. So each policy had already their score. So based on the total score of all the policies in each division, the following scorecard map was done. So to make you understand, so it was basically a spatial distribution of policies and their combined effect from the scoring placed on each city. What was done next? So the next phase is actual analysis, how we can analyze those choruses, if they work or not, by comparing them to physical and social vulnerability maps. Physical vulnerability was basically taken as urban heat island map or mean afternoon temperature map. Social vulnerability map was taken as, for United States data, is a social vulnerability index map, but that's just suggestions, therefore guidelines how to do them. There are some case study examples that I would like to show you to better comprehend this methodology. So in the case of city of Baltimore, as you can see, in the city of Baltimore, 4 plans were taken under this analysis. From 4 plans, only total 77 policies passed the tests and was included to scorecard mapping. From 77, 36 had unknown effect. 39 decreased heat, so had +1 as score. And only 1 policy was to increase heat. Therefore, you can see policies were addressing heat in the central, north, west, southwest, while the urban heat island is concentrated to central east parts, while social vulnerability index is concentrated in peripheric areas. So this is a nice example to see how all 3 indexes are not matching each other. So except of visual comparison, there was also some comparison by Pearson correlation coefficient that was done to see with the numbers which census areas are matching the urban heat island data or vulnerability index data. There was a few cities actually done as case studies. We unfortunately cannot go over all of them, but the most important is how to apply this methodology in the case of Torino. To go through it very fastly, the following plans were taken into the consideration, as the following are related to heat mitigation or heat adaptation or heat hazard itself in the city of Torino. From that, we have firstly made some let's say scheme that to understand how do they relate between each other, how they are connected, and we can see that all like non-binding strategic plans, they refer to the main binding plan, which is Piano Regolatore Generale, which is a municipal plan of the Turin. From the preliminary selection, we could already select 2 plans to eliminate, as the main binding plan is too dated. So it dated 1995, we could not use it. And Action Plan Torino 2030 has only strategies and recommendation and no specific plans to use. Next was to underline the selected plans through 3-point test. So, as you can see, 2 plans out of remaining 4 could not pass the place-specific criteria. Therefore, they should have also been eliminated from the selection process. What remained? Only 2 plans that we could use were 17 and 134 in total from each of them could pass 3-point test. These plans in the following steps should be mapped over the census map of the city of Torino, which will be our next steps. But to have, let's say, the full analysis, we as well have done the vulnerability risk maps. So we have taken urban heat island map for the city of Turin that was done for 21st of August during the so-called African heat wave. Here you can see the results, and you can see that even if like two major and two main zones that we can see with a high heat risk are industrial zones, it should not, let's say, mess our conception of the city, because as you can see, all the city center and many other areas in around the center are under the risk too. As for the social vulnerability map, this was a challenge because in the European context, we do not have such thing like social vulnerability index that US has implemented. So we have taken some data, so some socioeconomic and household characteristic data to be as variables for us. Combined, we have shown which areas of the city, let's say, has more social vulnerable units in it. So the analysis of the results is would look like this. So two maps of social vulnerability would be compared to scorecard map, which is not yet done, but it's next steps in our research. Therefore, what it could show us and what results we can see already and what takeaways we have. First of all, we already know that application of this methodology was a test and the certain methodological challenges were met. But the important is that even though the research is not yet concluded, we can see that the coherence of system of plans is a key to implement it and to address actually urban heat hazard, as well as important of place-based approach. So even if in the city of Turin many plans, as we can see, differently from United States, we could identify 6-7 plans to be included in this methodology. Most of them failed because of lacking of place-based approach. But the good news is that new general city plan is coming up in the future, in the nearest future, next few years, and where this place-based approach could be potentially met and addressed, referring to other or other climate action plans released by the city. So thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, I would like to answer them, or you could simply contact me. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Let me just set up the slides. Good morning, everyone. I'm Rita Seminario, currently a student at PoliTo di Torino. From March to September 2023, I took part in a traineeship experience organized by Aurora Lab, a laboratory at PoliTo di Torino. Today, I would like to talk to you about both my own traineeship experience and Greta Villas, my colleague who unfortunately could not be here today. The aim of our traineeships and thesis was to rethink the uses of two public spaces in the Aurora neighborhood in the city of Turin in Italy. This was done by bringing together both technical knowledge of university students with experiential knowledge of the local community. So before delving deeper into the main topics, I would like to briefly talk to you about Aurora Lab, which is made up of an open group of professors, researchers, and university students. And its aims are to offer students multidisciplinary training and also to bring the university's activities closer to Aurora and its inhabitants. Aurora Lab is also part of the DIST department's third mission, PoliTo+Impact, and its initiatives are aimed at activating research action and learning by doing activities. So the studied neighborhood is a fascinating and complex area characterized by a rich social fabric, but also significant socioeconomic fractures. Located in the northern part of the city, as you can see in the first picture, Aurora is known for its blend of historical, industrial, and modern elements that make it a unique and vibrant place within Turin. So on one hand, it is widely known for being a hub of the city's creative community with its artistic initiatives. On the other, though, Aurora also faces challenges related to socioeconomic disparities. Some parts of the population experience economic hardship and lack of access to basic services. So it's interesting to study Aurora's complex social fabric because it also is a reflection of the broader dynamics of many urban neighborhoods worldwide. So for the first project, we followed mainly two paths for our traineeships and thesis. These paths were integrated, as we will see later, and intertwined among each other. But for the first project, we focused on building a structured survey of which the main target groups were primary school students, teachers, and school staff of one of the most multicultural schools in the neighborhood, which has a foreign student population of more than 70%. We wanted specifically to collect information about both the overall quality and perceived safety of the school spaces, as well as of the public green spaces in the neighboring area. This was done mainly to shed light on the ways in which some school spaces, like its courtyard, can serve as a place for the community as a whole, but also on the ways in which some public spaces could serve as an extension of the classroom. So combining these two elements together and analyzing their interactions. This is a simple overview. We chose to use a simple language in order to facilitate the understanding of the interviewees of the questions, since students were very young in many cases. The format included both closed as well as open-ended questions. These together different kinds of inputs according to the theme we wanted to analyze. And also answering time depended on the different target groups, because students were administered the questionnaire with the active assistance of the teaching staff during some school days, but for the teachers and the school general staff, we developed an online questionnaire to be distributed through an online form, and this was made to allow teachers and school staff to have access to the questionnaire at any time they wanted, thereby ensuring greater participation. So the total number of participants, as you can see, was of 148 students, 23 teachers, and 5 people from school staff. The main outcomes are the following. Internal and external school spaces could be improved, and this was underlined by all target groups. Past participatory and urban and tactical urbanism experiences were greatly appreciated, especially by teachers and students. An example of a past tactical urbanism experience is the Grandangolo project held in November 2021, and as you can see in the picture in the bottom right corner of the slide. And also, it's interesting to note how some suggestions, like the possibility of opening up the courtyard to the public participation for maybe some sports activities, was not received as well by all target groups. For example, while teachers and students were very open to this chance, to this possibility, the school general staff was worried about the eventual changes that would need to be applied to their work schedule. The main outcomes, instead of the questions regarding public green spaces, are the following. All target groups underline the lack of some services commonly found in other public green spaces or the bad quality of the design of these public green spaces. Also, school staff and teachers underline the lack of safety they perceived while walking in these spaces during certain times of the day. It's also interesting to note that Giardini di Via Sempon, which would be the subject of our second project, was not known to most of the population. So alongside the first project, as previously mentioned, we followed a participatory planning process involving a local bottom-up citizen group. They started planting flower beds in collaboration with an active citizenship project, which mainly focuses on cleaning and small-scale maintenance. This initiative garnered the attention of the local district authorities, and the participation process was then formalized and acknowledged. This formalization allowed for some improvements to be planned, for example, to make the area more aesthetically pleasing and more livable for the population as a whole, but also to add some inclusive design, for example, to the playground area reserved for children, as well as for other urban elements present in the other design elements present in the public green space. Notably, though, this process did not encompass a comprehensive examination or resolution regarding the main issues affecting the area, which would be accessibility challenges, the presence of the adjacent brownfield area, which extends itself for more than 72,000 square meters, and also the presence of disused railroad infrastructure, which you can see in the first picture, that these elements together, they hinder overall park functionality and user experience, but also, for example, some elements like the railroad infrastructure also divide to different parts of the city. So it was interesting for Greta and I to have this experience, because this led us to form some interesting reflections upon the complexities behind some participatory planning practices. So Politecnico di Torino, as well as other universities do, tries to help students gain a better understanding of urban issues by providing studios and workshops. We noticed, though, that often the complexities behind some of these processes are deeper and greater than what is analyzed in the classroom. So service learning practices, such as the one brought forth by Aurora Lab, the DIST department, the Politecnico di Torino, are very useful for analyzing multifaceted urban issues, which are often interconnected, and also very useful to us because not only they do make us and help us become competent professionals, but also responsible global citizens. So that would be all. Thank you for your attention.
So sorry again for all of the technical troubles this morning. I would like to start now what was scheduled for kind of 1 hour ago. So the final panel discussion with our guests. Thank you very much again, Tijana, Alessandro, and Akito, for being with us this morning. We would like to hear what is your impression of this diverse selection of works that have been presented this morning. I know that you need to leave us soon, so I would like to hear your comments, Tijana, please.
Well, First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this extremely interesting event, because I have been interested in transdisciplinarity for a very, very long time. I understand your technical problems, so don't worry about this. You can be assured that this happens a lot. Don't worry. I was really impressed with all the work that you are doing as a school and with the presented students' presentations. Thank you for sharing this with us. I would like to kind of take a zoom out from what we have heard before I give some comments about the individual presentations. First of all, when I hear the word transdisciplinarity, and I have been interested in the meaning of the words lately because of understanding that they can have different meanings. In what I have been exposed to, transdisciplinarity would usually mean a higher integration of disciplinary knowledge co-production. So it would be Cambridge Dictionary would define transdisciplinarity as something that has two or more sciences involved in making a project. While some others think, and what you have evidenced today, that the transdisciplinarity is actually a kind of an approach of academy working with social actors in order to produce a different kind of knowledge that is just purely academic. So I would kind of reflect on this. Then on the second level, I'm a planning theorist. So for me, it's very important to say that there are problems with knowledge transfer between the research and the action. Sometimes we use different questions. We are curious about different things. So the ontology and the research methods are different. In the management sciences, a couple of authors in 2006 offered the possible solution, and they called it engaged scholars or engaged scholarship. So this is what your students have talked about, and what you are as a school very, very much interested in. That solution kind of tries to solve the problem of the transfer between what is happening in the practices and what the research is really about. And what I have noticed in your students, they very much want to take the responsibility to change the world. So this is very inspiring, and it's very it's always good to have young people engaged and understanding the problems of the world. What you have showcased is really about different scales of research. There are different disciplines taking a dominant approach, and then they embark other disciplines to fuel this knowledge co-production. I would like to, if I have time,
Sure. Go on,
I would like to reflect on what is quality recognition as a process within the Association of European Schools of Planning, which I'm now chairing. I'm chairing the Excellence in Education Board, and I think it will be good if you apply for the certificate of quality this year. We have within this past couple of years worked really hard to kind of identify the main criteria, which are kind of also reflection points to understand what is the quality in education. And what I think that you have touched upon, we have kind of 13 criteria defined, but I think that you are mostly addressing with this kind of research, you're addressing cross-disciplinarity, which is a criteria which is very important. It's not only about multi and interdisciplinary, it's also about transdisciplinarity. So you are also doing a kind of work which is allowing students to experiment with professional ethics. They should understand what is the role of planner within the society and as a discipline at large, but they should also know how to be engaged in practical thinking and practical judgment, to know what is possible and
how we can kind of foster a good decision making within the institutional framework. There is also, I think that the contemporary, there is a criteria said that the students really need to understand how to tackle the contemporary challenges, but also opportunities. And this is something that we can see in the work of your students, that there are so many global and local challenges that need to be tackled so they can open the plethora of opportunities and options, how this can be solved and how this can be addressed. So I think that from the 13 criteria, you kind of at least directly tackle 5. There is also a very important issue of reflexive praxis, because our students need to experiment, and schools need to offer a safe environment so they can experiment and maybe even ask some questions that they would not be able to ask while they are in the practice, because their employers would not allow this kind of experimentation. I think the word experimentation was used quite often in the presentations that we heard today. And that is very important, that you produce, you kind of enable these safe conditions for them to ask all sorts of questions. When you listen to very prominent scholars, they would say that they kind of benefit even the most from stupid questions. Something that can sound at the beginning as stupid, it's a groundbreaking at the end. This is something that especially those who are into publication knows that sometimes we cannot ask all kinds of questions. So I'm not saying that there were stupid questions today, but I think that schools should allow students to play with their curiosity and offer methods and structure to that kind of playhood. So I was very, very much impressed, and I thank you for allowing me to take a part of this event.
Thank you so much for your commentaries. I don't think for a single moment that we were offended by mentioning stupid questions, because it is out of stupid questions that sometimes you open new possibilities. I'm always scared about too clever things and too smart things. You know, I'm very pleased to hear that you think that some experimentation is going on. Actually, research sometimes is performed in such a way that you know already what you will get. And this is not research, this is operation. Experimentation happens exactly when you don't know where you're going. And the process is interesting anyway, if this is led by a curious spirit, as you said. We as teachers are called to create an environment which is conducive to discoveries, to real research. Sometimes something useful is found, sometimes it is just funny, sometimes, I don't know, maybe it's not particularly interesting, but the playground, so to speak, needs to be open and to be serious, to be informed. This is our task, and the students, of course, need to enjoy it. Thank you so much for your commentaries. I would now hear Akito's view on what we heard this morning. Please, Professor Murayama, go on. And thank you for having been with us for all of the time, in spite of the technical problems.
Thank you for inviting me. good evening from Tokyo, Japan. I was very much impressed by the students' presentations, as well as research and educational program at DIST. I was in Turin recently, last week of September, and I was able to talk with many professors and students at PoliTecnico di Torino. And I think my impression of the presentations maybe can be summarized in 3 points. First point is that most of the research was responding to the global challenges, including climate change, change of distribution system, the need for more sustainable materials and construction methods, etc. And these global issues were students try to respond to these global issues through a local context, not just theoretically or conceptually discussing about the global issues, but really trying to come with a solution in the local context. The second point is that since I am an urban planner, I'm interested in thinking about physical environment and spatial solutions. And I think many of the researches were focusing on place-based, community-based, or site-specific solutions, which is able to integrate many issues coming from different spatial scales, from regional, municipal level, district, and maybe blocks and architecture. So this kind of multi-scale issues can be solved through the concept of space and the spatial solution. And also connecting different disciplinaries. I think spatial planners are able to respond to issues that are coming from different disciplines. And I think your students have ability to think in this way. So the spatial solutions or place-based solutions is my second point. Third point might be the methodology of the research. And I was very interested to know that some researches were very action-oriented, or it is in line with the tactical urbanism approach, which are becoming very popular in Japan too, since the traditional way of top-down planning has many limitations. So I think this is a new kind of a method or approach to respond to many issues very quickly, but also thinking about the larger impact of these small challenges. And lastly, maybe I should say something about international exchange. In 2018, many students, maybe 10 students from PoliTo visited our university in Tokyo, and we conducted a joint urban design studio on one of the suburban municipality in Tokyo. And we did a very interesting urban design studio focusing on the area with a mix of residential and urban farmlands. And the proposals was presented to the mayor of the city. And he was also impressed by the work. And actually that changed the kind of a policy of the city after that. And now I'm continuing some projects with the city, but now there are many policies to conserve urban farmlands within the suburban city of Tokyo. And many ideas came from our joint studio between PoliTo and University of Tokyo. So I think international exchange is very important. It has lots of inspirations and has lots of impact. And I'm very happy that PoliTo made a Japan hub in Kyoto. And I hope we can continue this kind of international collaboration as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your words. I strongly wish that this international exchange with Japan and with your university in particular will progress in the future, I'm convinced that this just brings good opportunities for all of us in terms of opening our minds and, who knows, discovering very relevant connections between the two countries that can be useful for both the research and investigation in the academic field and the contribution to public policies. I'm also very happy that you mentioned the fact that in spite of the multi-scholar approach and the very different topics we heard today, you were able to recognize a situated approach, because this is something that, of course, differentiates the work of people in the spatial disciplines from others. Just to make an example, a pure research in economics is not urban economics. The kind of research that can be done in a spatial planning or in a space-based research field is not the same as theoretical models. So this is exactly why we think that a multidisciplinary education and a multidisciplinary department as ours can really produce some cross disciplinary effect. So, it's not just the juxtaposition of different competencies that makes a research or a teaching hybrid in the sense we are trying to promote. So thank you very much again for your contribution. And last but not least, Alessandro, I can see you somehow in spite of the tigers at your back.
Surprisingly, I realized that these are bears. I also thought they were
it's
tigers.
Bears? Or maybe.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I don't know. But then I also thought they were tigers for a long period.
Okay. So please.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, not particularly well, but we do.
I try maybe to get rid of I'm trying to speak not too loud because here it's
very early in the morning. So thank you very much again also for being with us in the middle of the night.
Yes, it was a pleasant night in any way, also very charged with stimulation and reflection. So thank you very much for this, for having me here. Yes, I mean, there are several things that have been already faced by my colleagues, which were also part of my reflection. So I will try not to repeat these aspects, although I had to say I've agreed on many of what our colleagues already stated. So I would like to focus on more specific aspects in this case. The first is that the context of the discussion we are having about multiscalar and multidimensional perspective in research regarding the built environment and landscape is particularly interesting to be considered in the environment where you are in this moment, which is the context of the relevance of the role of students as researchers. This is, for me, it's very important because if we accept the idea that the status quo is not an option, and it seems very clear from all the thesis, or let's say almost every thesis that every work that we have seen, that this is somehow a starting point, so that there is a criticality coming from global and environmental crisis and also social crisis that we cannot overlook, and that this requests a new set of instruments to for the interpretation of research's understanding, and even more for the construction of impact. Well, we also have to admit that events like this are becoming more and more relevant, because we need to hear the voices of the let's say students that becomes researchers. So I would like to define them purely researchers, early career researcher, young researcher. And the reason is because I have a perspective about these topics that is probably more closer to the idea of activism rather than the one of the scholar, which means that I participated, I've been part of the COP26. 2 days ago, I was in the United Nations for the World Urban Campaign, and I have to be honest with you all. I always feel that I'm a little bit frustrated in this situation, because it clears emerged the idea that it's very difficult to overcome the problems with the instruments that created these problems. So I think that we have to rely on the next generation and understand that well, probably, I don't know if you know this part of the project, student and researcher, but a subtitle was the Verrocchio's project, intending that we need to be aware that the Leonardos or Leonardas of the future generation will be among our students. The maximum we can aspire as a researcher, as a educator, is to become a Verrocchio, so someone who is able to stimulate this level of creativity that goes beyond the idea of research as we intended today. So to overcome taxonomies, if you want. So I mean, this is for me an important starting point. We have seen, as my colleague already highlighted, theses that illuminate the diverse pedagogical approach, and as said before, more importantly, challenging conventional expectation. These theses not only provide insight into what is typically anticipated in research, but also offer possibility for new grounded framework to comprehend a broader spectrum of perspective, which I think is what we need. As I said before, this is a very, how can I say, we all agree, I guess, that we are in a transformative period which is characterized by evolving taxonomies. And this is due to the fact that we are profoundly affected by global environmental and social crises. Of course, we know that these are being already encapsulated by the 70 United Sustainable Development Goals. But I would say that more recently, what is becoming particularly interesting is to consider that according to the World Inequality Report, there is a clear correlation between inequality and environmental crisis, meaning that the level of transdisciplinarity we are talking about, and was also mentioned before, is, how can I say, it's deeper than we expected. So in simple words, the world we are facing is so complex that we know and we now understand, but it's difficult to grasp this, that a more just city means also a more environmental responsive city, and vice versa. The more environmental context means also more just landscape. So this is the reason, in my opinion, of the failure of COP26 and many other events like this, because this link is not there, not very clear, present. And I think that I found very interesting the notes that has been highlighted by the students about heat island effect, how there is a correlation there about heat island effect and social condition. I can confirm that, for instance, from our research here in New York, I'm not going to explain why, but the area with the highest impact on heat island effect are also the area with the highest criminal rates in South Bronx, in in a certain area of Flatbush, and so on. And it's not because, we have also to overcome the simplicity of the linear thing. It's not because heat makes people more violent. It's more complex than this. There is a world of complexity that led to the fact that the lack of quality or justice in the provision of quality design of green landscape is correlated to the fact that of social deprivation and impact of environmental feedback phenomenon like Italian effect. But we could talk about the same thing, mentioning the food security in the area of Arkansas. We have a similar case, meaning about water management. So in this case, I found particularly interesting that two completely separated theses. One was a PhD about the food chain, and the other was about the heat island effect, have been presented. Of course, we didn't make correlation there, but I think it's relevant that we have a field of research that at the end of the story are making one single question. And believe me, this is for us that work across landscape planning and architecture is pretty obvious. But when I go around in other universities, this is not very obvious. So there is still a big part of scholars or professionals that think that architecture or urban design or planning is about construction in a flat landscape. There is not yet how can I say, an understanding of the fact that we are talking about very complex phenomena that constitute variation of the continuum of the negotiation between environmental items and human and non-humans. So I think that this is emerging in what we have seen today. This is one of the reasons why I find this conversation particularly interesting. And again, as Tijana was saying before, the discussion about transdisciplinarity needs to go ahead in different directions. I would also like to add these things. While the discussion about, as you said, Tijana, and about transdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, cross-disciplinary, the definition is particularly relevant. I think we are also very close to start even becoming more radical. For more radical, I mean that at a certain point, now I'm wondering, are we missing something? Missing something means that probably something is happening in the complexity of the organization of science that is even moving the disciplines in different directions. So I'm wondering that if beyond talking about multidisciplinary, we should start about recategorization, because piece of it's not only that people from different fields are coming together, but that we are starting to realize that bits of knowledge that should belong to another knowledge are separated. They are not communicating anymore. So there is a problem of change of taxonomies, deeper change of taxonomies that for us it's becoming particularly relevant. Let me quote Michel Foucault that said that taxonomies at the end are not reality, are the way our brain, you as human, we built a narrative. So we should come back to this and discuss if the narrative we have built about reality now, it's useful, not even real or not, because we know that it's not real, but is useful or not. I can make the first example that comes to my mind in this case is, let's take the case of, I don't know, Göbekli Tepe. So it's archaeological case scenario, but what it's telling to us, and is not appearing, is that the relation between food production, cultivation, and urban environment as a bypass product of the birth of cultivation and the birth of permanency on the soil was a wrong statement. We know that creativity was more relevant and thousands of years of existence before the paradigm of construction and cultivation start overlapping. So probably we should start understanding a little bit more from neurosciences what is this impulse that we have to deal with the environment with a certain creative need or to express ourselves. Because the reductionist, I think someone else also talked about this, the reductionist approach to engineering is in a way not telling us why, and I take another research by Jan Tatter's paleoanthropology, is not explaining why people 10,000 years ago were spending more time drawing on a cave or making jewels rather than going outside and hunting, because we thought for many years that we are spending all their time hunting and surviving. Now we know that is not true. So what is happening there? What is the importance? Where is what is the role of creativity, or the role of how can I say, manipulating materials and understanding how this can be co-opted functionally for our survival? It's a discussion that probably is going too far in this moment. However, I want to make my compliments to the students, because as I said, we have a discussion that for sure open up a broader reflection about what is more interesting for me as a researcher. So the discussion about nexus, food, energy, water, and waste, because it seems clearly that all these multiscalar and multidisciplinary perspectives are highlighting that now it's more important to discuss about association and about how to do this association in a shorter frame of time. It's not about new technology, new idea, new paradigms. It's more about what we have, how can we solve the problems in 7 years, you know, because this is surprisingly that we are still discussing. So how can we make impact? And I think all the research that have been addressing these discourse in different way. Of course, maybe in this context, if I can make a note, but a positive note, the discussion about Molino was more encapsulated in a different context. But I've enjoyed that thesis also very much as an Italian architect, because I think that also in the heritage we can find, even though this seems a little bit different from the other, also in the heritage we can find ways to reflect a little bit more about how to rebuild a knowledge of architecture, urban planning, urban design, which is not about construction, it's not about building equal architecture, but it's about how we can build ideas, not how we can build buildings, if you want. I try to be as fast.
Wow. No, thank you so much, Alessandro. I think you mentioned a whole bunch of things, and I won't be able to react. Oh, you're not there anymore. Yeah, it has gone away. I would like to react, but we try to catch him up again. Lui o lui a te? Yeah, in the meanwhile, Tijana, please.
I'm not going to, we are going to wait for the colleague to come back. I just wanted to say something. Yes, okay, we can go on with the normal program.
But please, if you wanted to add something,
yes,
free.
I wanted to add something to Alessandro, but I thought of using the time to say something to Rita and Greta. I think that was the last presentation in which at the end of the presentation, they reflect on their own experience, which I found extremely important, that we finally kind of treat this as people, research as people, we are doing this. And then this transformation that they were talking about, and also frustration, which I think is going to be the most important thing that we need to consider when we are introducing or we are practicing transdisciplinarity in our schools, and engaging students in the transdisciplinary research we need to be very careful that we don't produce more frustrations about what are the things that they cannot change. So I think that we need to be careful about what is the impact of us introducing them to practice. And look, this is how you can build the argumentative tools, and you can help social agents to produce space. And when those changes are not produced, how to help them to stand on their feet, even though those changes are not coming to effect. So I think we need to be very careful for not introducing more frustration and try to be as proactive as possible, knowing that activism is going to be needed, yes. We're going to have more, I think, more thinking about what kind of methods we can develop and what kind of tools we can develop as senior scholars to help young scholars make the change in the world. So we need to be. I also appreciate very much when they put the numbers of students who were engaged and professors who were there to help them conduct the research. I think this is also important. And to Alessandro, just a short comment. That is the most important, I think, what you have tackled. What is transdisciplinarity and how we are moving, and which kind of profiles disciplines are trying to reflect, is also a part of the cultural background. I have been working with landscape architects from the United States in the last year, and I can notice the difference of how they treat spatial planning and how they refer to spatial planning as landscape architects. I think that is also as a kind of a cultural barrier, but if we are going to be global citizens, we should maybe also become global researchers and try to work on this as well.
Thank you so much for your commentaries. I will add a word on frustration because this has been a recurring word. So please listen to the end of what I say, because the beginning will be sober, but there are so many reasons for frustration, and it is good that this is frustrating. Alessandro, you started your commentaries saying that these are not students; these are early career researchers, and I totally agree. What you heard today was qualified real research, and the problem is that within the academic world, creativity is not particularly favored. Very soon in this country, early career researchers apprehend how to encase their research in a specific branch, which needs to be recognized, which needs to be kind of, you know, approved as pertinent to a specific area or field. Otherwise, whatever they do, whatever they produce, is easily labeled as not relevant. So this is one reason for frustration, because you need to, after all of this talk about multi, inter, trans, cross, whatever, you actually and very soon need to go deep vertically in some area and forget about all of the nice things which were said during your training. The other good reason to be frustrated is that we cheat all the time. We know so many things. We have been knowing so many things about the present environmental catastrophe, and what we have done, anything. Well, maybe publications in reports, international conference. Even we signed treaties at the highest level, protocols, understandings, agreements, whatever. And what's going on, that we heard it last summer was the hottest ever, and the next will be the hottest ever. So there are so many good reasons for frustration. But you are very right, Tijana, when you say anybody is able to make a change alone. It is a very Western way of thinking that I'm nothing. The more you know how ignorant you are. And this was known to the old philosophers. And the same happens with this kind of necessity towards action. Yeah, activism is possibly necessary, and the students of today are often engaged much more than we used to be in our younger years. So I think there are no reasons for desperation in front of the obvious impossibility to tackle the problems, the complex and very grave problems we face today. It would be existentially desperating. This is nothing we can work on, both as teachers and as young researchers or students. There is still a lot of scope for creativity. There is still a lot of scope for engagement and action. And to conclude, Alessandro, thank you very much also for what you said about taxonomies. I absolutely agree that if we go on perceiving that certain categories are given, are not disputable, barriers exist from, separating different areas of action or different areas of knowledge. A different attitude is very difficultly developed. So yes, thank you so much for also for having said this also. I would like to ask you if you want to add anything to what has been said already, or maybe the students here want to comment something or to react to some commentary. So please. Maybe you come next to me.
Just say thank you very much for your feedback, and thank you very much for your feedback and attention to main issues that are rising in the world. It's a good guideline to hear some comments from the professionals as you, so we know where to focus our attention in the future research.
Thank you. So I would like now to say goodbye, but yeah, so come Claudia, Angioletta next to me, and the students also. Maybe I will zoom it a bit out, provided the cable is.
Okay.
Okay.
In the meantime, let me also thank the New York Tech for inviting us to this event, this initiative of students as researchers, and your words were very encouraging, encourage us to go on, to process in our engagement in teaching and research. So
thank you very much. Also for the invitation for the quality recognition initiative. We will contact you soon and we will work on your suggestions. Thank you very much also for this.
So, bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Bye. Bye. Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye.